Legislature's back in order. Mr. Majority Leader, you recognized.
Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to item 14, legislative concurrence.
On the motion to go back to 14 on legislative concurrence, hearing no objection.
Mr. Speaker, I move to place the committee report from the Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation on the nomination of Mr. Earl J. Garrido to serve as the member of the Cockpit License Board, with the recommendation to confirm and to move that to the second reading file.
On that motion, hearing no objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we go down to the second reading file.
Thank you very much, Mr. Majority Leader. We're back on the second reading file. The next bill on the agenda is Bill number 4. The main sponsor, Senator Frank Blossagan Jr. You're recognized.
Buenas and Hafade, Mr. Speaker and fellow colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move for the placement of Bill number 4, that's 34 COR, as amended by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication in the third reading file, please.
Any objection? There being none, so ordered. You're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in a similar use of verbiage that you used a little earlier, it's a pretty simple and straightforward piece of legislation that would obviously have a tremendous impact on the individuals that sitting presently occupying this position. But Mr. Speaker, I'd like to highlight, and just for the information of the public, read the portions of this piece of legislation and what impact it would have. And this is Bill number 4, that's 34 COR, relative to excluding Imagalahin Guahan, Isigundu Namagalahin Guahan, and senators of Elias Iturin Guahan from the Competitive Wage Act of 2014 and to reducing the salaries of the same. Section 1 does exactly that, Mr. Speaker. It goes back to the section of Public Law 32-208 and deletes Imagalahin Guahan, Isigundu Namagalahin Guahan, and the senators of the Guam Legislature. Section 2, with regards to senatorial salaries, it redefines the senatorial salary as provided for in some research that my office has been able to conduct. It would revert the senatorial salaries to $55,303 and the speaker's salary to $60,850. Also, Section 3 would provide for the salary of Imagalahin Guahan at $90,000 per annum, and Section 4 would provide the salary of Isigundu Namagalahin Guahan, the Lieutenant Governor, at $85,000. The amended version or the substituted version, Mr. Speaker, I know that there was a question that was brought up a little earlier in regards to what the difference is between the introduced version and the amended version by the committee. And if you look at page 3, that's where the additional insertion of the words notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation to the contrary, and then it continues with that particular verbiage. Mr. Speaker, you and I know that this particular issue has been discussed ad infinitum over the course of the last 2 years plus. And we have seen, in my opinion, the implications of this particular measure when it was first passed, Public Law 32-208. So there's no need for me to discuss it any further other than recognizing that Bill number 4, that's 34 COR, reflects the leadership of this island community at large. Imagalahin Guahan, Isigundu Imagalahin Guahan, and the senators in the 34th Guam Legislature. And I believe that in any show of example and any situation where in fact we have to take the lead, that it really always should start from the top. So, Mr. Speaker, I reserve any further comments until the conclusion of this particular discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
On Bill number 4, Senator Talina Nelson.
afternoon, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to thank my colleague, Senator Uggan, for sponsoring this bill. I'd like to do a quick timeline of the Competitive Wage Act dating back to January 2014, when the Hayes study was first submitted. And when the Hayes study was submitted, the background of this Hayes study was, and I quote, to have a comprehensive classification, job evaluation, and compensation study for positions covered by its unified plan, as well as elected and appointed positions. Now, in February 20, 2014, Bill 278 was introduced by the late Senator Ben Pangilinan. And this bill was passed the same day. This bill essentially prioritized the funding for classified and unclassified governor, lieutenant governor, senators, AG, OPA, and cabinet members. However, the public hearing on this bill was waived. So essentially, historically, there is no public hearing docket that shows this bill, historically. March 5th, 2014, Bill 278 lapsed into law, then becoming Public Law 32-136. This bill changed the recommended wages from the Hay Plan for the governor, lieutenant governor, senators, AG, OPA, and cabinet members. And in a letter, the governor also stated that he was, in a sense, in my interpretation, he was disappointed at the changes that it was not followed by the Hayes study. On November 21st, 2014, which is almost immediately after the 2014 election, the acting governor, Ray Tenorio, called the 32nd legislature into session. And in his letter to, at that time, Speaker Wonpat, he stated, the sole purpose of the special session is for the legislature to consider the attached bill, which sets the salary rates for E. Magalahan Guahan, E. Segundo na Magalahan Guahan, senators of E. Legislature and Guahan, and the Attorney General of Guam. It also addresses salaries for cabinet members pursuant to the Competitive Wage Act of 2014. Now, mind you, this is the first special session immediately right after our 2014 election. Granted, it's still the 32nd legislature. And going out and during the campaign and talking with people on the campaign trail, they were very upset at the motives that occurred during this special session. They were disappointed in our public leaders for giving themselves a salary increase as their first special session. I too myself was disappointed at this decision. And I made during that time and going to various forums and speaking with people, I agreed that I would repeal the pay raises. Now, to put things into perspective, for me, I understood that for me, the most important part is that there was no public hearing for the salary increase. And now this bill, Bill 4, after hearing, going into having a public hearing and hearing the concerns of the people by testimony, but also outside in the community, there's two concerns that they have with this bill. The first one, and this is also amongst with our colleagues, the first one is that there may not be enough votes should the governor veto this bill to override it. So that means that we will not be able to make this bill become law. The second is that many people believe that some senators